Welcome back, everyone. We are back on YouTube and LinkedIn with another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into game-changing leadership strategies. And of course, we hear from the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Josef Martens, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is Felipe Medina. Felipe is the CISO with Geographic Solutions, a provider of software solutions for workforce development. Before that, he held tech leadership roles for various other organizations. And today, we're thrilled to have him with us. Felipe, it's a pleasure to have you here in this conversation.
Pleasure's all mine, sir.
Felipe, you've had a very successful career in technology, as a leader in technology, as an executive in technology. When you reflect on your own journey, what do you attribute your success to? What do you think are the ingredients that got you to where you are today?
That's a good question. I attribute it to my military service, albeit it was only 4 years. One of the things that I wanted to attain within those 4 years is to become a sergeant in the U.S. military, in the U.S. Army that I was in. My wife did go ahead and attain that, but I never did. I remained what we call the E4 mafia, right?
Okay.
The doers of sorts. And then I always had that want to lead a team because of that, right? I did get a chance towards the end of my military career to go ahead and do that, but building the collaboration, right? And I always say this to everyone: if you want to know what an agile workforce is, join the U.S. military. It's
Interesting.
one of the most agile organizations you could ever join. So
Say a bit more about that. What gets it there? And you say military
it,
experience is the backbone of your
yeah.
leadership. So say a bit more about what the agility is coming from.
Well, I think that in the military, not one person does everything, right?
Mhm.
Even in special forces teams, you have one guy that does the medic, another guy that runs, comms, another guy that runs, and that collaboration and that team mentality
Mm,
is what really goes ahead and ingrains where the leadership comes from. It
mhm,
is those guys that can go ahead and not only build that trust within the team, but also command when they say something to go ahead and sit down and enact and do that.
yeah.
Right. So it's that fire order. It's that, we've got guys coming on the left flank. I need you here and I need you there. And it's all happening so dynamically that people just respond to it. You
Mhm.
don't need to call out who does it or whatnot. The soldiers just go ahead and do it. And that's the type of leadership that I try to exude.
Now, the military has the structure for that. It has the processes, right, and the culture as well, of course. How do you get that into a commercial organization? How do you get that into the private sector?
You hire other veterans that can help you with it. That's number one. Um,
Okay.
so that's number one. But
I
I
should have
think
seen that coming.
no, I'm a big proponent to hire veterans for the same reason that I just said, right? The agility
Okay.
and the command structure that's already built in. Now, on the civilian side in corporate America, very difficult to go ahead and sort of translate that. So the way you go ahead and do it is start building the rapport and the trust and say, I tell everyone, I'm going to ask you to do something.
Mhm.
You're going to question it. That question, I may not answer. I need you to do this task because I may have another 5 people doing these other 5 tasks, and I am the one that has the big picture. So I want to go ahead and lead and direct, right? And if you go ahead and sometimes, especially in cybersecurity, if you go ahead and tell someone what that big picture is, the brain starts going
Yeah.
and they're going to go ahead and get overwhelmed. So I try to
Mm,
chunk things down into
mhm.
small, consumable pieces. As the phrase says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what I go ahead and give my people. I think that builds some camaraderie and some
Yeah.
trust, right? And then I always follow up after the tasks have been completed with, this is the entire picture. This is what we were trying to accomplish. You do that 4 or 5 times, no one's going to question again. So that's how I brought some of that military mindset
Yep.
into what would be, civilians and
Yeah.
commercial.
Got it. Let me take a look at your leadership journey from a different perspective. I'm sure you had mentors, you had trusted advisors, you had role models, people who were following you or who were by your side and encouraging you, giving you advice. What was something you picked up from these people, either advice or something you saw in them that was important to you, that you still carry with you today?
Eating humble pie. And that's a phrase that um, resounds. And I tell everyone that at some point you're going to be wrong. At some point you're going to need correction. And being able to take that correction and not be
Mm,
offended by it
that is
is important. In fact, my team will tell you that I never want accolades. I don't care. I don't want an attaboy. I don't want a pat on the back. What I want is for you to challenge me and to tell me, listen, you're not doing this, because that's the only
mhm,
way I'm going to grow as a leader. It's the only
mhm.
way anyone can grow.
Was it always clear to you that this is important, or is this something you learned at some point, something that you realized during your journey?
Um, I think that where I learned it um, for corporate America was when I did my startup, right?
Okay.
And when I was part of that startup, I did that with uh, good buddies of mine that I had worked with, as well as, a friend of mine that I've known since I was 12, that we were in the same industry together, right? So we went ahead and did that startup, and throughout that, it taught me how not to go ahead and be offended when someone's saying you're doing this wrong,
Mm.
right? And startups are very dynamic in nature, um, and I credit a lot of my growing to that startup.
Got it. Okay. Again, thinking back to experiences you made on your journey, what was something that you surprised you in a leadership situation? What was a situation where you thought you have a clear idea, there is a plan, I know how this is going to play out? You went there and it went completely different.
A startup.
That
Do
seems to be the treasure
I
trove of
yeah.
information of experience.
Yeah,
Okay. I
it's
mhm,
it's starting up a business trial by fire when you do a startup,
mhm.
right? And try to get investment and try to go ahead and make sure that doors stay open and whatnot. I think that was the most beneficial business practice that ever taught me how to run business and how to lead in that business.
Would you encourage everyone to try this for the benefit of the learning, or would you say that's not for everyone? You need to have a certain
I,
mindset.
I,
Where are you on this?
you have to have the appetite. You have to
Uh,
have the appetite to go without a paycheck, right?
yeah.
Because that happens. You got to
Mhm.
pay your people
Right.
first, right? And this is where leadership comes in, right? So if you're a good leader, you're going to go ahead and sit down and say, you know what? I've got X amount of dollars. I need to go ahead
Mm,
and keep X amount for rent and everything, and I got to go ahead and pay these people.
yeah.
So sometimes you're going to go ahead and go without, right? And I think that um, teaches and shows your team and your employees the selfless behavior, right? And the stability you want to give them in order for you to go ahead and succeed as a business. So
And it
yes, I
really,
would say if you have
mm,
the appetite for it, I totally it is drinking from a fire hose, not a water hose,
yeah.
what
And
you're
it really
learning in
puts
business acumen.
a fire under your rear end to get something done, right?
Hmm.
To really get this to work. Felipe, we talked about your past leadership experience. I'd like to shift and take a look at where you are today. And again, not a question about companies, not a question about roles or titles or anything like that. Still a question about your growth, your journey developing as a leader in technology. When you look at where you are today, what do you think is an area where you can grow? What's an area you're focusing on at the moment? Or where do you see a next step possible for yourself?
So I think this is a constant struggle, especially in cybersecurity, right? Becoming a better business leader,
Mhm.
understanding budgeting, understanding what the business is doing and why they're doing it, so that you can go ahead and make better risk-based decisions for the company, right? And I'm very in tune with learning, right? Because I report directly to the president and CEO right now. I get a real good, how would I say, feedback loop, right? When I'm doing something that's not beneficial to the business,
Mm-hmm.
that course correction happens real quick. And again, I stating what I said, becoming a better business minded leader where I understand the business, I understand all of the players, and I understand how to speak with each player. When I first joined the company, or any company, I do a exercise where I have a sheet. How do you like to go ahead and be managed? How do you like to, and I go
Mm.
through the team and every peer that I'm going to be working with in the business so that I understand the type of conversation and um, the type of person, right, that they are so that I can go ahead and modify the way I communicate to something relevant that'll resound with them.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the direct connection to the CEO and president. Not every CISO is in that situation, right? Many CISOs report to a COO, CFO, I've heard. They're not often, not always at the big table. Some of them are at the small table at Thanksgiving or at the kids' table at Thanksgiving. What advice would you have for them? How can they create that feedback loop?
I would start with building relationships, right? So if you are given 5 minutes at a board every 3 months, right? Make sure that those 5 minutes are impactful, right?
Hmm.
And they're impactful for the business, building on relevant recent news that is relevant for them to understand from that perspective. And then
Hmm.
um, you don't have to go ahead and be the only person. What I tell everyone here is security is not my job as a CISO, right? Ultimately, I'm the one held accountable, but it's everyone's job in the company, right? So everyone should go ahead and have that security mindset, right? And I have established what's called security champions throughout the organization for each
Hmm.
team. And those are the people that if they go ahead and have a red flag, they know, go to the security team, either to me or one of my leads and whatnot, and say, hey, look, something's happening. This is what
Yeah.
we need to go ahead and do. And we triage that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you have something like a favorite leadership tool, some kind of leadership strategy approach that is your go-to or is the fallback if other things don't work anymore? Is there something that you would pull out of your repertoire as a first choice or maybe last resort or something like that?
cursing helps.
Cursing helps. Okay,
Yes.
okay. Now you've got to say
A
more. That
well-placed
sounds
F-bomb.
okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But it does help. There's an inflection point, right? Some
Okay.
some may say that, the particular word is not professional or whatnot, but
Right.
I think there are times where you have to say,
Whatever.
WTF,
Yeah.
what were you thinking?
Yeah.
How did we get here? How could you have thought that this was the proper thing to do? So but those are seldom moments, right?
Mm.
You have to go ahead and remain calm under composure. So, my tool is don't get me to that point, right? If
Mm.
if we're at that point, the conversation
Not
becomes
good.
very combative at that point. I just need to table it or I need to
Mm.
defer and say, well, this is, you know what, I'm going to document this and it's going to go to the CEO,
Yeah.
and that person is the one that ultimately makes the risk-based decisions and signs off on this,
Yeah.
right? So I think just understanding uh, human nature, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Everyone is going through something. You don't know what that something is. So having the grace to go ahead and be able to, even when it's getting heated, to go ahead and take a pause and say, hey, what am I contributing here? Maybe I need to lower my voice. Maybe I need to go
Hmm.
ahead and use a different tactic or something. I think is really my fallback plan.
Got it. Yeah. Now let's shift and take a look into the future, Felipe. No doubt strongly shaped by AI. But what do you think is leadership going to look like in the future? Let's say 5 years, 10 years down the road. What do you think will be different, if anything, in leadership at that point?
So leadership in AI or just leadership? Because you brought up
Leadership in
AI.
general, leadership in general. And I'm putting AI
Okay.
in there because I just wanted to preempt the possibility that AI shapes everything. And I just want to focus it on leadership. Right now, of course, AI is there, but
So I
that's
think
maybe a
I
side
think
topic even to
the
leadership.
I think the most important thing to note here is that responsible AI usage is where we should be. You know, if you've been at panels that I've done, um, I'm not against or for AI. I think responsible AI is definitely something that I am for. Why that is the case, right, is, you know, I say it all the time, the dumbification of America, right? The more AI usage happens, what's going to happen, right? So, you know, one of the consequences, let's just say, of AI usage, and something that I'm trying to get leadership to understand, right, is what's going to happen with all those college graduates that are looking for that entry level job, but the AI has taken it over. And, you know, everyone's going to go ahead and come back and say, well, they should go ahead and learn AI. Well, name one university that has in their cybersecurity curriculum any AI prompt engineering or anything. It's not there, right? So I'm working with local universities and colleges to, you know, amp up what their college curriculum needs to look for the future, right?
Yeah.
So I think responsibility, right? If you go
Okay.
ahead and start using the AI for those entry level jobs, you're leaving the workforce at a disadvantage, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not caught up to where we're at. So I would say that would be my number one.
Got it. Okay. Felipe, let me ask you a last question and then we'll wrap it up. If you had a magic wand and you could change something about how most people lead, what would you change?
Being a servant leader. It's often looked at as a more passive approach to leadership
Yeah.
instead of the more aggressive. But you know, a servant leader will go ahead and sit down and step in and step up, and you can go ahead and see it just in the quality of work output
Yeah.
when someone feels like you've got their back, right? And that you can go ahead and step in and step up. So I would say definitely the servant leadership in me, right? That goes ahead and allows to, you know, form those bonds with people.
Got it. Felipe, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Pleasure's all mine again. And thank you for having me, Joseph.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, join us again for our next episode. And until then, keep your brain cells active.